The story begins with the best assassin in the world. He is quietly doing his job, one shot here, another shot there. After completing his job, he wants to leave, but the gangsters find them, and they have to flee. Thanks to the protagonist's strategy, the two manage to outwit the gangsters and are saved. This is the last job of the protagonist. He does not want more murder assignments, and only wants to dedicate himself to educating new generations. Inform the agency where you work that the gangsters have been eliminated. The agency that gives you the orders thanks you, and that you enjoy your retirement. While he returns to the agency's facilities in a plane, during the trip he realizes that the plane is falling and goes immediately to the control room to be able to fly the plane. He realizes that a fighter plane had sent him a missile. He just had to connect loose ends. The same agency that hired him to kill people, now they wanted him dead. Dying on the spot. He wakes up in a different place. He is in the presence of a goddess. The goddess tells him that thanks to her the protagonist had not been sent to limbo. She tells him to help him with a job. Since the protagonist in his life last time, he was the best assassin in the world. The protagonist does not think to refuse his proposal because he has a chance to reincarnate. The goddess tells him that he only has to assassinate the hero of a magical world. And in order for him to accomplish his great feat, he gives him the choice of incredible abilities, but he does not have as many abilities as the hero he has to kill. The only rule he has before killing the hero is to kill him only when the hero has defeated the Demon King. And because the hero must die, the goddess had used her clairvoyance, and was able to observe that after killing the Demon King, the hero would begin to rule the entire world and form chaos. The protagonist had his doubts, but he accepted anyway. The protagonist did not want to live as in his previous life. He had dedicated his life to the agency, but the agency in the end had betrayed him. Now that he would revive in a new world, he just wants to live a quiet life, and how he wants and achieve happiness. The protagonist awakens. He had been born into a family of murderers. After 7 years, the protagonist successfully adjusts to his new life. During the day he seemed like a quiet child, but at night he had meeting sessions with his father. The murky thing comes when his father tells him to take off his clothes, but only to know if his son was developing well in his physique. After his inspection, his father teaches him to fight. His father believes that it is time to improve his son, so he performs an operation on his son's eyes so that he can see far distances and hires a wizard girl to learn magic. The next day a girl arrives in a carriage to be able to teach her magic. This girl is called Dia. This girl teaches him the basic knowledge about magic. As the protagonist had skills delivered by the goddess, he manages to learn magic very easily. In the process, the protagonist and Dia fall in love. The two boys created a magic in which they could create custom weapons for battle, like a shotgun, a cannon, etc. The girl says that she has to go home, because her work is over, and she has nothing else to teach, promising that the protagonist will visit her as many times as he wants. The next day her friend leaves, and is alone. And as a sign of his graduation, his father tells him that he will have to do his first murder. The protagonist had already done it in the past, so he fulfills his first mission with ease. The protagonist was already 10 years old. While he was hunting in the forest, he met some wolves that were about to devour a girl. The protagonist saves her without much difficulty and feeds her. The girl tells him that she is a poor girl and her family had thrown her out of the house. She did not have to eat or where to live. So the protagonist offers to stay with her, because it seems that she had some physical talent. The protagonist was already 12 years old. The girl whom he had rescued had now become a beautiful woman who is the services of the protagonist as an employee. At night the protagonist teaches her to fight so that she is also a murderer. It is time of graduation as a murderer for the protagonist. His last test for his graduation will be that he will have to defeat his father in a fight. Father and son face each other in a very close fight, but since it was obvious the protagonist wins, it was obvious that the protagonist would win because he already had experience in his past life. The protagonist accompanies his father through his routine as a murderer at night and as a doctor by day. His father explains that his family is in charge of protecting and bringing balance to the kingdom, killing evil people and saving the lives of deserving people. and who bring well-being to the kingdom. The protagonist is ready to be a murderer, but the only thing he lacks is that he has experience in infiltration, so he ends up turning into a new person for his work as a merchant. On his journey, the protagonist meets a group of girls who had suffered a lot in an orphanage. The protagonist arrived to save them. The leader of that group is called Maya, and she fell in love with the protagonist. She sees him as her Prince Charming who rescued her. The protagonist talks to another merchant. That man is his father's friend, and he was helping him in his process of becoming a merchant. He offers him a product that moisturizes the skin and cares for women's faces. The protagonist had found a fault in the skin care system. The merchant's wife tries the product and can see that it is very effective, and she ends up liking it a lot. In this way, the protagonist manages to finance his product and become a merchant. The product is a great success. The girls he saved now are a great help in his store. Over the months, Maya had managed to have an information network about the whole country with the stores they had opened. With that network of information, he could get and know who is the hero who will defeat the Demon King. Maya and the girls thank the protagonist for saving them, and that they are willing to work with him as thanks. The job of becoming a merchant was over. It was time to go home. Now the protagonist was 14 years old. His mother receives him very animated. His father asks him if he would like to continue being a merchant or a murderer. Being a merchant was just a way of being a murderer, which fills the protagonist in the soul, is that you can see your people happy without any problem. It was the moment of his first job. He infiltrates as a merchant and ends up killing a drug dealer. His job was done. He does not kill on the orders of his father, but because he believes that this man deserved to die for causing discomfort to the people with their drugs. The next day, the protagonist receives a report from someone who could be the hero. This supposed hero is causing trouble in the kingdom where his friend Dia lived. The protagonist had been visiting his beloved Dia once a month for the past few years. They have a casual and fun conversation. The protagonist asks her if the rebels were causing serious problems, but she only excludes herself that the situation is under her father's control and will be solved without problem, saying goodbye in a strange way. The next day, a man came to report that Dia had been kidnapped by a rebel nobleman, and to end the war Dia had to die. The protagonist does not think twice and say go save his beloved Dia. Thanks to his employee, the protagonist reached the other kingdom faster. After a few hours of travel, the protagonist arrived at the castle where Dia was being held. She was able to find many soldiers guarding the castle. As a good assassin, the attacker begins to assassinate soldiers who could cause him harm. Thanks to this distraction, the protagonist was able to infiltrate the castle without much trouble and was able to meet Dia. The joy does not last long because suddenly a weapon arrives at the castle, but thanks to the protagonist they manage to defend themselves in time. The protagonist manages to visualize that there is a very powerful man in the distance. The man in the distance has an incredible capacity for recovery. The protagonist assumes that he is the hero he had to kill. He knows this is not the time for him to die, but he has no choice. The mysterious man offers him a duel of knights to end this battle. The protagonist accepts but asks a series of questions to know what would happen if he won the fight. He is somehow distracting this person. They flip a coin to start this final fight, but when the coin falls to the ground, a gigantic material falls from the atmosphere, destroying everything in its path, like a nuclear weapon. The protagonist had sent a metal alloy into the atmosphere, and he only had to distract his enemy until he falls. He was not a knight, he is a murderer. He fainted, but after a while he is awakened by Dia. They cannot contain their excitement to survive and end up kissing. The protagonist had brought Dia with her home, because she could not allow Dia to return to her kingdom. A few days later, the protagonist informs his father that he had failed in his murder with that man, but he was happy to be able to save Dia. The father informs him that the hero appeared in his kingdom. With the appearance of the hero, surely the Demon King would also appear. Then the protagonist realizes that the person he has fought with is not the hero. Rather, it was a different person. Ending the anime. In this way, the first season of this anime ends. It is more than obvious that it will have a new season. but for now there is no date yet. Having said all this, I say goodbye, until next time.